Hey everyone, DB here to review another episode for the new TV show Gotham, the TV show that's about Batman, but not really about Batman, but you get the gist of it. And of course, this video will contain spoilers for the episode, which this time is entitled Arkham. And boy, does it live up to that name, because whenever you hear the name Arkham after the two Rocksteady games, you think of something that will be worthy of really capturing the epic feel of that name, because it's mainly associated with those games. And I believe that this episode rightfully did that, because this is probably my favorite episode of the season so far. Way to go, guys. You guys have definitely stepped up from not only last week, but the week before that, and the week before that. Because one of my favorite, if not my most favorite thing about this episode was the tension about the escalation of this gang war that might be coming on the horizon. You know, at the beginning of almost every episode so far, we've had that flashback, or that whole previously on Gotham segment where Penguin is telling Gordon, "There's a war coming. I can see it coming." They kept playing that clip over and over, and just when I was literally thinking to myself, can you guys please stop showing this clip over and over unless it has some kind of huge significance? It is in this episode where we finally see that significance. We finally see that storm in the horizon with the lightning flashing, and you know that something big is coming, and we see hints of that in this episode. The overall plot for the episode is that the mayor, played by Richard Kind, who I have not really appreciated in this show, because the first couple of times that we saw him, I thought that he was just okay. I've known that actor from various things. He's been all over the place. I can't really think of any iconic roles that he's done, but I grew up with Even Stevens on the Disney Channel, and I remember him playing the uncle, the fun uncle. You know, his dad is all uptight, but he was the fun uncle that eventually turns out to be a little too childish for his age, but, and then Lewis learns his lesson. But anyways, that's where I mainly remember him from. And from there, he's popped up in movies and TV shows here and there. So I was really well acquainted with the actor, and it's cool to see him get more work. But I never really appreciated him until this episode, because I really feel like he was the mayor who is scared of his own city in this episode. And the plot of the episode focuses on him casting a vote of whether or not to expand the territory that surrounds Arkham into something bigger, or demolish the thing and then distribute it, and all these different plans. And I can go into detail of what it's all about, but basically it's not necessarily his call. I mean, through the media and through the public, it looks like it is, but in the underground of Gotham, the police, as well as various people associated with the police, whether they're corrupt or not, know that it's basically Falcone and Maroni who are trying to take this land, because if you control the land, you control the power. And it's basically these guys playing a game of chess with one another by ordering hits and taking each one, taking out hits on each other to be able to become the most powerful crime boss in Gotham by owning this land. And I loved every minute of it. I don't know who wrote this, but bravo! You really picked the show up for me and gave me hope, and I really hope that there's more episodes like these, because I just loved everything that was going on about what the bigger picture is. These crime bosses having a legitimate reason to be crime bosses and to be doing this thing to control Gotham. And we weren't really focusing on the corrupt police, or we weren't focusing on more Batman Easter eggs. And it wasn't even another case of the week. It started off being, because we got that assassin coming out of the shadows and taking those two guys out with that little device that he puts together. And I'm like, okay, here comes another guy that they're going to go and investigate and deal with. While in the background, we got this whole thing with Maroni and Falcone. But then as the episode goes on, not only do we learn that this hitman, who's actually a hitman, is tied into this whole thing, mainly on Falcone's part, but then we see the bigger picture. We see the plot thicken of how these two are trying to get at one another and fight for the larger piece of the land that is right there in the dead heart, or the corrupted heart of Gotham. And I just loved it. It was something just really well written. It's not one of the best written episodes in television. No, don't get me wrong on that, because it did have its moments of feeling a little too TV or too overly whatever. And you know, it has its problems. It had its problems that I'll talk about in a second. But for the show that it is, Gotham, this is probably one of the best. This is so far the best episode in the series. Even the stuff with Fish Mooney, I felt was really cool. She didn't have an awful lot of stuff to do in this episode, but I understood it. She's plotting in the back while these two are fighting with one another. She's in the backyard going hee hee hee. And it's interesting to see that she's taking a different approach as opposed to somebody else who's practically doing the exact same thing. And like I've stated in my previous reviews, this is one of my favorite things about the show so far. And that is Penguin rising up in the ranks, who literally got promoted in this episode to being the manager of that restaurant, becoming one step closer to becoming a crime boss himself, possibly after the foreboding departure of Maroni and eventually Falcone. We'll see the Penguin that we know from the comics emerge in the city of Gotham. But for now, I like seeing the baby steps that Penguin is taking and how he is the one who is lighting that spark to ignite that all-out war by hiring his own men to pose as Falcone's men and have Maroni think that Falcone just put a move on him. That was cool. That was really cool and interesting for the character. Like I said, the episode has its moments where, it feels a little like, for example, that scene where Penguin walks in with the cannolis. I mean, I know those guys can't be the smartest, the sharpest tools in the shed, but you've seen movies, right? You've seen TV, right? If a guy walks into your room like that with a box saying, "Here, you deserve it," I mean, you should know better, come on. And I guess if they didn't know better, then maybe they deserve to die. Oh God, listen to me. Enigma shows up again, and of course he's being all questiony. I mean, fortunately he's not speaking in riddles like he was in the pilot, but he's still doing that thing, and I'm pretty sure it's not the actor's fault. But people behind the camera are still telling him to be like, "Hey, act like the Riddler, because hey, it's the Riddler." Now, how to do what I feel counteracted that in this episode is an actually good Easter egg, an Easter egg that I looked at and went, okay. That's how you do an Easter egg. Let me point at the camera here. That's how you do an Easter egg. And that was that shot of the plan that would have been that territory that would have been expanded from the asylum. And right there you see it in text, Arkham City. And when I saw it, I'm like, oh, yeah, that was good. And eventually, being that this show is the kind of show to somewhat cram Easter eggs to make the show much more Batman-y without actually having Batman, I was expecting the mayor to be like, "We're gonna call this place Arkham City," but he never did. And I really appreciated that. They simply just put the text right there in small font. It wasn't a big thing. It was just right there. And if you, not necessarily blink, but if you weren't paying close attention, you will miss it. That's an Easter egg. And I'm hoping to see more of that later on in the season. And I guess the only other truly low point about the episode would be the whole thing with Barbara. And I understand her frustration about how her husband's keeping secrets from her. But to get kind of bitchy there at the end and give him the ultimatum that, hey, if you don't let me in, you're going to have to let me go. I would understand that if Gordon didn't have the occupation of being a police officer. If he was doing anything else, if he was a circus clown, then I would totally understand Barbara. But the fact that he is a cop or detective in the most fucked up city on the map, I think you gotta know what you're getting yourself into, or you gotta know what you're getting married to, because you do look around you, maybe there's a reason why he's not telling you these things. It's to protect your ass. So that, in my opinion, was probably the weakest part about this episode, but I really enjoy this episode from beginning to end on a story level. It wasn't about action sequences, it wasn't about cool Easter eggs or the look of the episode, but the story. And that's something new for Gotham to be doing. So this is probably the first episode in the season, episode 5, entitled Arkham, that I'll be giving an 8 out of 10. It's a somewhat low 8 out of 10, but it finally managed to break through the 7 low that it has been on up until this point, and I'm hoping to see more of this in the remaining See, it's episode 4, so the remaining 18 episodes, because on the same day that Fox, I believe, felt very confident about this episode, they decided to order a full 22 episode season for Gotham. So I'm hoping to see more of this kind of storytelling in future episodes, but I am a little worried after reading a particular article that the showrunners and the writers intended to simply just make a 16 episode season. So that means that they're going to have to come up with 6 episodes to put in there, and that usually spells filler. And you know how detrimental filler episodes could do to a season. It could lose the momentum. It could really mess up the pacing of the episode. But we'll just wait and see, and I'm hoping that whatever they did have in mind, it was just as good, or is going to be just as good as this episode. So let me know what you guys thought of the new episode Arkham. Did you like it? Did you not like it? You better have liked it. And I'll see you guys next time. Take care.